Hi, I'm Chris McDonald, and I'm licensed therapist and registered yoga teacher 200 hours. I've had lots of different kinds of yoga training, and I'm here today to talk to you about the three secrets to keep in mind about integrating yoga into sessions. The first one is shifting your perception that yoga has to be complicated, that it's difficult to implement. And I wish I knew this from the beginning because I remember looking at Instagram and seeing some really crazy poses and people in contortionist positions. I was like, oh my God, I could never do that or teach that. But I want you to shift your perception from that to more simple, accessible, slow, mindful practices. The kind of yoga that I teach in my Yoga Basics course is more about simplicity and simplistic practices that are effective and powerful. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. Um, but basically, it's to help clients learn to regulate their emotions through somatic interventions. So it means that you're not conducting a 53-minute yoga class instead of talk therapy. I think that's a big misperception. So it's integrating within it. So it's part of the session. And in my course is how I talk about the how and when to bring these in ethically, safely, and effectively. So that's the important thing. So sometimes when I'm in session with a client, it may be 1 minute of yoga practice or could be a short flow for 15 minutes. Sometimes it is just one pose. So just try to keep that in mind that when I talk about integrating yoga into sessions, that it doesn't mean that it has to be like sun salutations and you have to know every anatomy for every single pose. But no, it doesn't have to be that way. And I teach from seated pose and some standing. And that's it. That's how simple it is because you're already seated. I find that that's easiest for therapists because you're already in a seated position, right, with a client. That's most accessible. So let's start there. And then when you get a little more comfortable to move to standing poses, guess what? You don't even need a mat. That's the beautiful part of this is we can keep it as simple as possible. Does not have to be handstands, crow pose, all those difficult poses or flows. So it can be just inhale, bring your shoulders up to your ears. Exhale, bring your shoulders down. Notice how you feel. As simple as that. Or it could be even bringing one hand to the chest. Let's sit here for a moment. Notice what comes up as you sit in this mindful awareness, being present with what is there. And that brings me to the next secret. It's more than just poses. So people think they hear the word yoga and they think asana, which is movement pose, tree pose. We could do downward dog. But yoga has 8 limbs. That's the beautiful thing that we talk about in my course as well, the many different parts and how we can bring that into sessions. Now, in this course, I also focus mostly on some movements, but also breath work as well. Intro, we call it pranayama in yoga, is one of the 8 limbs. And we don't get into meditation, but there is grounding practices. So just know that yoga also encompasses grounding. So there's lots of different ways to ground to get ourselves centered, connected to the earth, to feel more anchored in the body. I also talk about mindfulness practices, ways to bring that in session and being more present overall. Because, of course, if client's mind is racing with anxious thoughts, it's going to be much more difficult for them to connect with the body in that moment. But I have some ways. There are some ways I teach this with polyvagal theory and connecting a lot of this with counseling theory too, so we can lead with integrity as therapists. So we have pranayama breath practice, meditation is part of yoga, one of the 8 limbs that people forget. There's also yoga philosophy, the yamas and niyamas. I don't get too far into this in this course, but just know there's so many different options and ways to bring in session. And I think it comes as a surprise to a lot of people that you're probably already doing some yoga already. So let's build on that. Let's try to make a bridge and add to that and add more impact, more things that you can do, more tools in your toolbox that you can bring in that clients are just going to love. And part of what I do as a mental health therapist is for clients who are interested that they can learn how to bring more of these practices at home. So, how can they bring more yoga, breath work, meditation, whatever it is they may be interested in? How can they set up a consistent routine for themselves? So, what that does from their nervous system, it helps bring them into more of that parasympathetic response, more of that calming if they're more anxious, or maybe a little more energy with some energetic poses. I talk about both anxiety and depression in the course. So just be thinking there's lots of different ways, lots of different parts of yoga. It's not just asanas, and we can do it seated. There are tons of different ways to bring seated yoga. There's seated yoga classes you can also find on YouTube if you want to give one a go. If you haven't heard of Sita, many people haven't. But standing poses are also very impactful. So just keep that in mind. So, secret three, mind body awareness for emotional connection. And this is one of the most powerful parts of yoga basics is getting into noticing sensations. What is there? And can I allow space for that to be present with the client? And as a client is talking, even to say, hey, I noticed that, your shoulders seem like they're getting very tense as you talk about this. Did you notice that? What would it feel like to bring your shoulders down? Or what would it feel like to roll the shoulders? How would that be as a practice for you? Just an example of how we might integrate. So we're bringing in what the client brings, but with a yoga practice, which could be movement, it could be breath, it could even be placing your hand on a shoulder, just noticing sensation. What is there? Can you be present? And bringing curiosity. So, one thing I talk about in the course is neuroplasticity. So, how do we bring neuroplasticity in with clients, teaching them about some of these neuroscience skills, right? That we all have the power to change our brains, to rewire the brain. That's what neuroplasticity is all about on its basic level. We can make these neurological changes by bringing the body into therapy. So, having the hand on the shoulder. So, what do you notice if you have your hand here? And if it feels unsafe, that you can always offer, you can remove that. What is the sensation? Is it heavy? Is it light? When did it start? Has it always been there? And just, of course, asking these questions a little slower, but just giving space, allowing. How big is it? Is there a color to the sensation? What does the sensation want to say to you? So, yoga is awareness. So, just remembering that we need to simplify yoga in the therapy room. And we got to bring the safety in as well. So, I also teach about polyvagal theory and how to integrate that with yoga. What does that look like? If we're more activated, what can we do to help a client in hyperarousal to bring them back down to, or I should say, up the ladder, right? And the polyvagal ladder to more safety and connection. Or if they're down and they're more depressed or shut down, how can we help bring them up the ladder so they can gradually get to that feeling of safety and connection in the body? So there's a lot of skills with this, but it is possible. So I want to let you know that I have learned this over the years. I've been teaching yoga in sessions since 2015, and I've learned from lots of different teachers and really tried to integrate this all together and bring my own spin on this so that I can bring this to you so that you can learn these skills as well. And the cool part is you get to practice. So the only way to build confidence with yoga practices is to teach and to teach over and over and to really take that time to embody to see what it feels like as someone teaches you the practice. So in the course, I have therapists paired together in Zoom rooms. So, and then you teach each other and help each other and just say, how did that feel as I taught this? And then the other person will also share that as well. So I hope that's helpful for you with the three secrets and that maybe this can demystify this for you a little bit. But I thank you for watching this video. And of course, if you have questions, you can always reach out at chris@yogainthetherapyroom.com. and I'd love to be there for you and answer any questions.